This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point Shea Stadium.
Jack, as we transition from the outfield to the infield, one guy who plays both positions well when called upon, and we just talked about him, Jeff McNeil, another possible X factor in the lineup. And I say that because, Jeff has had over the last 4 years, it's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of career over the last, 4-year span where it's very good. He'll have a off season, wins the batting title, and then we're back to an off season. Some Met fans are uneasy with Jeff McNeil because of these inconsistencies at the plate, and the possible promotion of some prospects have made him a part of trade talks. But I think those are dire at this moment, considering the injury to Ronnie Mauricio. I think that because he's out for the season, and like we've said, we don't know what Starling Marte is going to give us. I think it's imperative to keep Jeff McNeil, especially with a guy that's as good as a utility guy, playing the outfield as well as he does, playing second base. Can Jeff McNeil find consistency and get back to being that hitting champ that we saw in 2022?
Well, it's going to be an even year, so I think the answer is yes. Obviously, that's been the case with Jeff McNeil. 2020 and 2022, he was incredible. No, I mean, it's an interesting case for him. I think that the shift ban was real, and I think that messed up his game a little bit. And he had a full season to adapt, so we'll really see what kind of hitter he's going to be on the other side of it. But in my opinion, there's no reason why he can't return to the form that he was at. I think McNeil is at his best when he's constantly moving around the diamond and keeping himself active, because I do think he's still one of the best, pure hitters in the game available today, up there with the Luis Arias's of the sport. He just has to go out there and prove it again in 2024. For him, he finished the season strong. I mean, his numbers kind of land in a place where you don't wince as much, especially considering what they looked like, when the Mets were fire sailing their entire roster. He was a big reason why the team fell apart in June. He didn't have a good month. But he lands in kind of a good place. He lands around league average with a 270 batting average, double-digit home runs. You like those numbers for McNeil, or at least you can swallow them at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if for him to be an effective guy and the guy that we paid that 4-year extension to, he's got to be at least competing for the batting title. He's got to be hitting over 300. He's got to be finding ways to get on base and kickstarting rallies. I never really liked him in the 5-hole behind Alonso. I know it was working for a large chunk of 2022, and it was fun to watch. It was one of the more fun lineup dynamics in baseball. But he's always going to be a guy that fits more at the top of the lineup for me. Or if things are going really well, at the bottom of the lineup, because I really like when the Mets were able to use him down there so he could reset the lineup and turn it over in the better parts of 2022. But yeah, for him, he's going to be a guy kickstarting rallies, and I have full faith that at age 32, he hasn't lost a step. I still think he's the same guy. I think he needed a year to adjust to the new game of baseball, and I'm hoping he can come out to 2024 storming out of the gates.
Do you think that was his biggest issue last season, was adjusting to all the new rules and the shift? Was that the biggest concern for McNeil? And we see him on the field. He's always hard on himself. They kept moving him up and down the lineup. Do you think all of that just compiled to, kind of frustrate him and, get the season that we got from him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jeff McNeil's a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. I think we all know that if you watch enough Mets games, you'll see some kind of reaction from him. And I think it was a mood that festered within the Mets clubhouse of frustration and a lot of just things not kicking their way that did kick their way in 2022. It was kind of one of those years where everything came together. And I mean, you look at Alonso's numbers halfway through the season, you can say the same thing for him. He was having a really, really tough year, especially when you look at some of those numbers in June. And that kind of thing carries out throughout the lineup. It takes a team for the team to succeed. This is not an individual sport. And Jeff McNeil is at his best when he's not the one powering a lineup, but rather a guy that's passing the baton to the next guy. And I think he really fit that role well in 2022. And that was a big key to his success, being surrounded by hitters that were just like him, that were stringing together hits and sustaining rallies and finding ways to get on base with incredible consistency and efficiency. So if he's able to be a guy at the top of the lineup where Marte is firing again, Lindor's having another one of his seasons, Alonso's hitting bombs, and maybe Nimmo's at the 5-hole where he's really putting a cap on rallies and stuff like that. And who knows what production you get out of the bottom of your lineup. That is the best situation for McNeil to succeed. I think there was a lot of pressure put on him, and I think pressure put on himself by the Mets struggles. to be a bigger piece of the lineup in 2023. And I'm hoping he can settle back into his role where he thrives the most.
And maybe trying to kind of top himself winning that batting title. And he was a very clutch player in 2022. And I think that as well, came up on him having to come up in big roles, trying to score big runs when, most of the bottom of the lineup was kind of like a death valley almost all of the season. So we'll see what comes of Jeff McNeil. I still think there's a lot of good left in him to go. And I hope we see that come 2024.